So this is exactly how I think about a commercial roofing business, okay? And so within the functions of the commercial roofing business, which are marketing, sales, production, obviously, putting the roofs on the building, fixing the roofs on the building, and then operations. And what I typically see is a lot of confusion between what is production and what is operations. And if my slides would work there. And to explain the difference of how I categorize it in my brain for you guys is essentially that when I think about operations, I think about all of the things that we do to continue our day-to-day operational functions internally. Production is literally what we're doing for our clients, like the fulfillment of our promise, the fulfillment of our contract. Sales is essentially the conversion of, eyeballs on our marketing to actual dollars. And then marketing is getting those eyeballs, to be able to understand, to basically inform people that we exist. And within those functions of the business, we have to have drivers or people that can run each extension of the business. All right. And so I think about that as, as simple as it is, a marketing leader, a sales leader, a production leader, and an operations leader. And then we have to have a leader to lead the leaders. Okay. Which, call it a COO or a director or an integrator or whatever title you want to throw at it. We'll call it a director for today's discussion. And now we can go as deep on this as you guys want. So you just let me know, I'll go through basically everything that I lined out here. And then if you guys have any specific questions to the leadership roles to run these divisions, again, feel free to put it in the chat or just unmute and we'll have a chat about it. So we'll start with marketing. And so if I was going to hire somebody to run the marketing division of my company, it's like, what does that actually mean? Okay. And so I would tell that person that they are ultimately responsible for the lead generation, our social presence, how we show up in the marketplace, like when people see, not necessarily when people see, but like how do people feel about your brand, right? When you walk into an Apple store or you're unboxing an Apple product, it has a certain feeling to it, right? You walk into a Nike store, if they removed all the logos, you'd still, know you're in a Nike store just because of the way it feels. And so everyone's brand, some are obviously way stronger than others. They have a feeling to them. And so like, how are you showing up to the marketplace? That's obviously a piece of your marketing. What is our lead nurture sequence and processes? Again, market awareness. How are we showing up? How are we bringing people into our ecosystem? And then, of course, our swag or our gear that, for the team internally and externally. So, which I could also categorize as kind of just like brand if I wanted to condense it down a little bit. When I shift gears and I go over to the sales side and I'm thinking about, okay, if I was going to bring a sales leader into the organization, what is that person ultimately responsible for? And so I think at the pinnacle, and you're going to see this for the production side too, it's going to be that person knows how to lead and manage people and then hold the rest of the roles within that sales function accountable. Okay. And so today we're going to discuss on how to, if you are the sales manager or you're looking to bring a sales manager on, I'm going to teach you how those things actually work or how they should work, how those systems should function. They should be ultimately responsible for the sales and revenue goal of the company and the pipeline management, making sure that people are moving through our sales process. They should also be responsible for the sales training and ensuring that that you guys have the proper tools to ensure that people are getting consistent training, which obviously we have some resources for you guys there. And then estimating accuracy and sales process as a whole. Okay. Production, same deal, right? We have to have a head honcho that can lead, manage, and hold people accountable. Customer service, the customer experience. And the difference in my mind between customer service and customer experience is I took customer experience from the tech world. And so if any of you guys, actually, I know there's a couple of you guys on here that are actually building, software products, either internally for your company or externally for the marketplace. The tech world is a beautiful place to learn how to run a production department for a roofing company. Customer service, customer experience, client success are all terms that kind of derived from that tech world, because they knew in order to get somebody to utilize a software, they had to basically hold their hand all the way through the process and give them a step-by-step walkthrough of what to expect next. And so I've taken some stuff there. I think about the customer experiences, like from the time they learn about our company, what is that experience all the way through the time they're paying to the time they're paying their bill. So without going, beating a dead horse or going too far down that road, production management, making sure jobs are getting built on time and on budget. They should be auditing the sales contracts to make sure that, salespeople never over exaggerate what they can do, or, they're always dialed in on their pricing. So, production wouldn't have much to do as far as auditing sales contracts, right? Totally wrong. And so auditing sales contracts to make sure that we're holding salespeople, the sales team accountable for selling good projects, and then managing subs if that's something that you utilize. All right. And then operations looks like in operations, it's all the things that I just listed out on the last slide, right? So it's like all the stuff internal to our actual company. The financials, our HR, which some of us probably need more HR than others. So probably one of those people. IT, office management, asset management, facilities management, things of that sort. And so as you can expect, if we have all of these people that are doing these things to manage the day-to-day of the teams that are doing marketing, sales, production, and running the internal of the company, we've got to have somebody to hold the leaders accountable, basically, to lead the leaders. And the director would be responsible for doing that, ensure that the profit and loss is budgeted correctly, that the business plan is forecasted out so that we're not, throwing darts in the dark, and removing obstacles. So I know for me versus, the rest of my team personally, it's like if something comes up, I have a tendency where like I can remove an obstacle within like minutes, where it might take some people hours or a day to kind of figure out what to do next, because I have that ability to make a decision. And I'm sure some of you guys are the same way. So we want a director that would be able to operate and problem solve quickly and feel like they have the authority to do that. And then just be able to prioritize the ideas. And I feel like I have to utilize just myself as an example because it's what I have in front of me. But it's like, I have new ideas every day. And so for me to have a director, I know like yesterday I had 10 new ideas. As a company, I don't want to be implementing those 10 ideas. I want somebody that's going to say, hey, yeah, this idea is good. We'll talk about it in Q4. This idea is decent. Let's talk about it in Q2 next year, right? And somebody that can like put those pieces where it makes sense to implement into the company. So that's a director role. And since we all came here to actually talk about sales today, let's talk about the other roles within the sales function. And so the way, number one, I'll preface this with, this is not the only way to skin the cat. This is just my way and what I've seen work, not only for within how I was structured as a company, but how I've seen a lot of you guys structured. And so I see the sales team as a four-part container. The sales leader, because we need somebody to ultimately be responsible. If any of you guys tell me that you have two people that are responsible for your sales team, you're going to get a throat chop. And then I'm going to tell you that if two people are responsible, nobody's responsible. And so one person has to be the ultimate sales leader. Doesn't mean that we can't have like a sales manager and then a sales leader of smaller teams, which is what I did when I had 26 people. But sales leader, business development rep, sales reps, and estimator. And when I say it's a 4-part team, I don't mean that it necessarily has to be 4 people or more than 4 people. This just means that there's 4 segregated roles that need to function within the sales portion of our company. And it could mean that you have one person generating business as a business development rep, going out and walking the roofs and estimating the jobs, sitting in 3 of those seats. Okay. So in your accountability chart or your org chart, depending on what you guys have, this should be, even if it's the same name, right? Even if it's Brian sitting in all 3 of these seats, it still should be 3 separate seats because it's a different role.